Hi, loves. Welcome to a new episode of AW Confidential. I'm joined today by Carolina Rodriguez, Vice President of Marketing at World Emblem, and one of the few women leading inside a heavily male dominated industry. Her journey is rooted in grit, heart, and a life changing season spent in a hospital when her daughter was born with a congenital heart disease. That experience reshaped how she leads, how she shows up, and the way she's challenging toxic corporate culture with empathy and truth. And we love truth. Hello, Carolina. How are you?
Yvette, thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. And just, when I read about your story, it pulled on my heartstrings. I'm a mom. Case, of course, my baby is about to be 23 years old,
Right. He's still
but,
he or she's still your baby.
but I've had struggles in the corporate world. I remember I was doing events during that time, during the time when she was growing up. And it was this tug. It's like you want to be the best mom, but you also have this career and you want to bring your best to whatever space you're in. Now that first, and I do want to jump in because motherhood, many of our audience members, many women in our community are mothers, and some are thinking about motherhood or are in the process. So I want to focus on that first. The first chapter of motherhood for you, I think it was 6 months in a hospital. Oof, it must have reshaped everything for you. How did that experience, and I would love for you, if you're willing, to share a little bit about that experience and how it redefined your leadership, because I think it changes you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think I found out that my daughter had congenital heart disease at 22 weeks. I knew already going into delivery what may be coming ahead. As soon as she was delivered, things escalated, and the first thing I did, I called, my boss, our CEO, and it sounds like, hey, things are not looking the way they're supposed to. He told me, turn your computer off and come back whenever you're ready. And I was like, hey, thank you, but I'd rather keep my computer on because there's not a lot that I can do here. So I never took maternity leave, and it's a little bit insane,
A little bit.
I also had a C-section. So that was a little bit challenging, but we were in a hospital. She was not in good condition and there was not much that I can do. So I think for my sanity, the one thing that I can do is the one normal and stable thing in my life right at that moment was showing up to work and working. We had a very honest conversation. I said, there's going to be days that I'm not going to turn my camera on. There's going to be days that I'm not going to be able to, log in. And he was very, very understanding. So I had to say, like, I'm very grateful for that because I don't think most employers would have done it. But he also went through some challenges earlier in his career with one of his sons. So I think him going through that experience shaped how he handled me when I went through my experience, one. And then two, he said something to me that really stuck to me in how I move forward in managing my teams is if every time somebody from my executive team has a personal problem, I fire them, I would never actually have a solid team. I would always be rebuilding the team. And the reality is that we all have issues. In my case, it was my daughter, but you have deaths in the family, you have cancer, you have like life is happening.
Mental health
Mental health.
today.
Yeah. So I'm very grateful for the fact that I had a place, that supported that and that continues to support that to be able to be the parent of a sick baby and still be an executive at the company.
And how did that experience change you first as a human being? Because and as a mother, how did caring for your baby and at the same time juggle a full-time management role, how did it change you? Did it make you rethink priorities? Did it make you think about life differently? How did that change you?
Several things, right? So for instance, being in the hospital for 6 months, I am super type A. I would say prior to that, everything had a time and a schedule and a box that needed to be checked off. To this day, that doesn't exist anymore just because when you have a toddler, it's whatever, however they wake up that morning, right? It took me a little bit to actually adjust to the new schedule or the lack thereof. And that's been, I think, a growing experience for me because I am very hard on myself and those around me. If we have a schedule, if we have an appointment, if we said we're going to do something, like I'm expecting you to show up. So I think it's taught me to be a little bit more lenient, obviously within reason. The other thing I would say, my husband makes fun of me. I used to be like a health junkie, but being in a hospital, um, you kind of end up eating whatever's available depending on whatever's going on. There wasn't a lot of home cooked meals, but I think it wasn't so much about the food. It was about me being very rigid. So I, and I've said this to friends that say like, you have to be angry, at God. And I said, actually, no, because it's forced me to become more flexible. It's taught me to be better as a human being.
Adaptable.
Yeah, adapting to my needs, which I think before I was very rigid when it came to adapting. I was like, this is the way, it was almost like a sergeant with myself and then with those around me. And I think the biggest learning and shift was I had a team and I needed to rely on them. And it wasn't a choice. So I called my team. I was very transparent with them. Hey, this is my situation. I'm not always going to be around because of my situation. But whatever you need, if you truly need me, text me, call me, and I'll make myself available. It might be at weird hours, but I will be there for you guys. And I am very grateful because they really stepped up and it was like they only called me as needed. Afterwards, I still met with them frequently, but it was like, we took this decision without you. Is it okay? And I was like, no, yeah, you know what? And me having to let go and giving them ownership also helped them grow. So I've seen their evolution. So yeah, in a weird way, it's been a really crappy experience, but at the same time, it's also, there's a lot of beauty that's come out of it.
Well, it's leaning on others. I know for me, I was raised in a Dominican home.
I
So
used to.
oh, okay. See, so you'll understand. We'll connect. So I remember growing up, as I went through life, it was always like, I got this. I got this. El mundo se me estaba cayendo encima. I was like, no, I got this. I could carry the world on my shoulders. No, I can't. And I think these are the experiences that force you to lean on others because it's either that or you will crumble. And sometimes we do have to crumble before we ask for help. So I completely understand where you're coming from. And I do believe it is, I can't imagine it is a double edged sword. But at the same time, I'm sure that you have demonstrated so much growth and inspired those around you to also grow, I think that's a blessing. So I love that. And thank you so much for sharing
Oh,
that.
of course, of course. It's part of my story.
Now, I'm curious because I used to work in the corporate world. I love that your boss gave you the space and had empathy for what you were going through and gave you the space to take care of your family. How has that empathy towards you changed your leadership? Because I do think we need more compassion in leadership. So, how did compassion change the way you lead?
I think in general, I've always been compassionate, just because of the way that I was raised and my faith background. There is a place for both, and there's KPIs and KPIs are non-negotiables, right? And and deadlines are deadlines, but there's a human behind those KPIs and there's a human behind those deadlines, right? And life happens. So and I always say this to my team is if you're not communicating with me, then how can I trust that you're communicating with our target audiences? So communication's key. If something's going on personally, like, talk to me about it. We all deserve that grace when things are coming up. I also try to have a pulse on what motivates them, so that I can find ways to drive them. And really, that I'm not getting into their personal life, but I know that they have kids and I know what's going on at home at a high level, just so that when performance isn't there or I see that they don't show up at their best, it's like, hey, what's going on at home? Even if it's like a 5-minute conversation, I've learned how much they appreciate it, and how much they're grateful that I acknowledged them, that I saw it. And I'm like, hey, you know what? I know this was due today, but this is not open heart surgery. If you get it done to me tomorrow, that's fine. I understand, but make sure it's done tomorrow. And I think I've built a level of trust with my team because of that kind of dynamic where they come to me when they have problems. I would say that in my career, I've had 2 people quit on me and both of them hurt because I think I've always had true, honest conversations and they're not quitting. They're saying, Carolina, I think it's my time to leave. And I'm actually probably been helping them to transition and also helping the company, to make sure that the transition is smooth because I built that level of relationship with them that they're not leaving me. They're leaving for something better. And I know well in advance that they're leaving because we have that kind of trust.
Oh, wow. I think it might have been the first time I resigned for something better. And he said to me, the one lesson I have learned is that good people often leave. I was like, really? He said, yeah, good people want the growth, want to do better. So you sort of have to expect them at some point to leave if there is no further growth. So I love that you lead in that manner. Now, where did that come from?
I have no idea. No idea.
Did you have some good bosses?
Yes, I've always had. For the most part, I have really good bosses. I've had really good mentors that I'm very grateful that shapes the way that I am. And I want to add to that, right? I want to be able to provide them growth and grow them to their potential. And I always say this, and this is actually from one of my previous bosses. And I love her, Andrea. It was early on in my career. She took me on to all her meetings, and I remember at the beginning, and I'm like 21, 22, and I remember saying, I was like, I have no idea what's going on. Like, I don't know, like, why do you bring me into these meetings? And she told me, I want to make sure that you know everything that I know so that when I'm up for a promotion, that I can promote you to take my job. And I
A
took that with
woman.
a woman. And I took that with me because I said, wait, for me to continue to grow, the only way that I'm going to grow is if I can go to my boss and say, hey, I'm due for this promo and I already have, the person who can sit on my seat. So I train and I work with my team with the intention of finding my successor so that I can continue growing. And then it's also motivating for them to grow and they're learning. And I joke with some of them like, dude, I paid $30,000 for a master's degree that you're getting for free,
Percent.
but I'm willing to do that because that is an investment I'm willing to make on them and I'm willing to make on myself, for my growth, right? The times that someone's come to me and said, hey, I'm leaving is because there was no opportunity in the department or the company for growth or the gap of where they were to where the next jump was so big that I couldn't really promote them. So, Amicable was like, hey, you know what? I can offer you what you deserve to continue on your growth journey.
It's really interesting because I think most of what I've seen is there is a scarcity mindset. People think not and I don't like generalizing, but many people think that there isn't enough. So they can feel threatened by someone like you and Andrea obviously wasn't. She was looking to help you grow and help you evolve. But that is, I think, it's not the usual. Have you ever been in a position where many of us have been where we're seen as more of a maybe of a threat, or it's more of a toxic mindset where I think scarcity brings on toxicity. I do.
Yeah. And yes, absolutely. And it hasn't been easy, right? And I think it's double fold. It's like being a woman, being Latina, I'm this tall.
Yeah.
So it is a threat when all of a sudden you have this little girl coming in and trying to be boss or trying to dictate her way. I've always said this, and is if I'm not good enough, then I don't deserve to be here. Or
Ooh, can you elaborate a little bit?
if if you're hiring me to do a job and you don't give me my place, then I don't deserve to be here. And if you decide to let me go because I'm too competitive against somebody else, then I don't want to be here, right? So like all in all, it's like the older I get in my career, it's like it has to match, and it has to match in my values, in what the support that I'm getting from my peers, the support I'm getting from my boss. So it's either like one way or another. It's like if I'm a threat to you, that honestly, that's your problem because that means I belong here, you
No,
know?
I'm telling you, I worked with a woman, this was decades ago, that she brought me in. She let me go very nicely. You know what her reasoning was, which is insane. I think I walked away in shock. She said, "You're too good at what you do. You can take my job." I was like, "Wait a minute. You came back from maternity leave. Everything was done. But that's a problem, and I've never understood that. I would want someone to come in and, pitch in, be part of the team, and do the things while I'm away.
Right. But at the same time, like when you look in hindsight, right? Do you really want to work there? Do you really want to work for that person?
100%
Was
no.
that person really adding to you or putting you down? Right. So like you didn't belong there. Funny enough, I actually had a boss that she brought me in and it was really funny because I didn't capture this at interview, but the CEO asked, why should I hire her? Why are you picking her? And she said to him, she can probably do my job better than I can. right? Now, at the moment, I didn't catch it. She left on sick leave, came back, and then I was doing her work. And when she came back, she let me do her work. And I kid you not, she was behind the scenes watching YouTube. And here I am, like doing all the grit. And my teammates were like, "Why didn't you say something?" I was like, "No, no, no. You know what? I'm actually been learning a lot, whether it's here or somewhere else. There's things that I didn't know before that I'm doing, you know?" Fast forward, her performance was down, and I learned that they were going to put her job, open to the public. And I just went up to the CEO and I said, "I've been doing her job for the last 6 months. I know that this is going to be opened. I know that it is probably to go up to you and just say this, but I want her job. And I know that I've been doing it." And he kicked me out of his office and he told me that it was disrespectful for me to do this. And a week later, I had the job.
I love, oh, you are a bad mama. I
And
love it.
and I'll tell you this, like, to this day, and, like, I tell a story to people, and people are like, "Oh my god, that's so cunning," right? And I say, "No, you know what? She," and I go back, and I was like, "When she hired me, she knew that I was better than her. She told the CEO, and then she didn't guard her job. Like, you still have to protect what's yours. She put me to do everything. She gave me the opening, and then it had nothing to do with me when, her position was gonna be terminated, but I had already been doing the work. It was just an easy plug and play for me. And of course I'm gonna take advantage of it.
But you know what that tells me? And I don't know, I just met you, that you know your worth and you know what you're capable of and you're
Absolutely,
willing to
absolutely.
take a chance on yourself. So
And
kudos to you.
and again, if you would have said no to me, then I would have said, okay, and realize that I'm not worthy of that to him. So that's not my place. That's not where I need to be.
I love that. Thank you. Oh, I am learning so much. So I love it. So you are often the only woman at the table. Yes?
Yes.
That pressure hits differently. I mean, you've done all these amazing things and you've stepped up to the plate and you welcome the challenge. In what moment did you realize that you had to lead your way? You couldn't, so a lot of us follow patterns, right? We don't dare apply for the job takes. But you've done these things over and over. Was there a moment when you realized that you're the only woman in the room, but you are just as good as everyone else? Were you always like that? Because I think so many, especially women in a man's world, there's insecurities, there's doubt, there's a lot of political game. It's the corporate world. But you kept showing up and sitting at these tables and taking a seat at a table that a lot of women would be intimidated by, but I don't see that in you at all.
What? Why should I be different? It's a mindset,
Because
right? It's a mindset. It's a mindset.
Latina, morena,
I'll take yes, yes,
we.
yes, but I could also say, there's a gringo, uno gordo, the other one's this, right? Like we're all different, right? So why do I need to put that stigma on myself, right? If the CEO or whoever invited me in that meeting believed that I needed to be in that meeting, so why am I not like thank you, it's an honor, and I'm gonna sit in the table and play until I can't, you know? And there's been times, and actually very, very early on in my career, I was 25. I was brought into a meeting, and everybody was a C-level executive. But I was working on a project, and my C-level executives brought me in. He didn't even bring the VP or the director. I think I was a manager at the time, so I was pretty low in the food chain, right? And they asked a question, and I answered. They asked another question, I answered. My third question, I didn't know the answer. And I fumbled and I said, I don't know. Something changed in the room, right? And when we left the room, I noticed that something changed because I was almost like, okay, this little girl has it. And then all of a sudden she didn't, right? And my C-level executive, he goes to me, "I'm going to teach you one thing." And he goes, "Never in a meeting say you don't know." And I was like, okay, because you take credibility away from me. He's like, "You were da, 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 da." And then all of a sudden I was like, "I don't know." And you dropped yourself to a level of not knowing, not having the knowledge. And I was like, "Yeah, but I really didn't know." And he goes, "Nobody needs to know that. So you say, I don't have the answer right now and I'll get back to you." And that flip because you're not taking credibility away from everything else that you do know. What you're doing is saying, "Hey, you know what? That's a great question. I'll get back to you." And it's been very useful, But I think the biggest thing is like somebody put me there. Somebody believed that I needed to sit in that table, right? So if they believed in me, why wouldn't I? I don't know. I don't know.
100%. So in male-led industries, women are told, and I I just think it's across the board in society. We are often told in maybe not directly, but indirectly, to shrink, to soften, or to blend in. We don't go up too loud or too bold. What did you refuse to compromise about yourself so far in your career? Because you're still young.
There's times that we're in a room and everyone's going right and I'm going to go left. We may still go right, but I'm going to still share my point of view.
Has that ever
Um,
backfired?
yeah, for sure. But I'm not going to change it. Now I think as you get older, like I'm more thoughtful, and of how is this going to backfire, and like before I share my thought, and sometimes it's going really fast, but I'm like negative, 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 positive. Okay, these are all so negative, but I still feel like the positive is strong enough. Just go with it. But I think it's really reading the room, knowing where you are, and is it going to add value? Where I think for me and going, whether it's male, whether it's being younger, it's a different perspective. I've cost the, oh, we didn't think about that, or we've never done business this way. It doesn't mean that they're going to change the way they do business, but I actually got them to pause and say, hey, that's another way of doing things. But I think the biggest thing is like really reflecting whether it's going to add value. Like I try not to speak unless it's adding value, just because I think differently. So if I'm adding a different perspective, then I'm gonna share it. If not, then I'm kind of like, okay, let's go with it.
Oh, man, you are fire, Dominicana. So I want to I don't want to let you go without asking you a little bit about this because I think for me, being a mother just it made me better. It made me more patient. It made me more patient for sure. It definitely helped me look at the world differently. If I wasn't a mother, I think I wouldn't have a care in the world. I wouldn't care about, keeping the world clean, like, clean air and all these things, right? So motherhood gave you a deeper well of empathy and resilience. How has that emotional intelligence become a strategic advantage for you in corporate?
I think mainly with my team, I don't want to say that they're my kids because I don't want to belittle them to say they're my kids, but they are. Like I take care of them, and I want to make sure that they grow and that I'm helping them evolve. Right? I think the biggest thing, and this happened indirectly, and I'm saying it not to pump myself up, but it's feedback that the girls have given me in the team. Everyone on my team knows what I've been through, and there have been girls that weren't sure if motherhood and work can coexist. And my story is like, well, if you can do this. So I think the biggest thing is like teach by example. And it's both in my workplace and in my home life. So we talk about making the world a better place. It starts with me, and it starts with how I treat people. It starts with what I'm showing my daughter. So indirectly, by whatever I'm doing and being me, has impacted my team to also want to be better and be able to pursue the working mom and still be able to be a parent. I had one of my girls that she found out she was pregnant and she was having twins, and she almost called me crying. She's like, "Are you going to fire me? This is happening." But I was like, "Look, if I didn't get fired when my situation, I was like, oh no, like let's work through this." She's like, "It's just double the everything, right?" And I was like, "Let's work through this." I was like, "I'm not firing you. Don't quit on me. Let's work through this." And she's still with the team. So
Wow. But
it's
isn't it crazy that she actually was worried about being fired?
yeah. But I'll tell you this, when I started in this company, I think I was already engaged. And one of my questions for Randy, my CEO, is how do you feel about, being a working mother? And what's the like those were, and I had never asked that before in any jobs, but I think it was very important to understand the company culture around me being able to be a mom, understanding the time off, even though I never took any. But I think it's important that if that's something that you have in your plans, ask ahead. Going back to, is that the right place for you? Is even if you're at a current job, you're not applying for a new job. If you're at a current job, you should be able to have a conversation with your boss and say, "I'm thinking of getting pregnant," and just watching their reaction. And if the reaction is not positive, before you get pregnant, you should probably start applying for a new job. No, I'm kidding. I'm
Well,
kidding. Don't do that.
I
But,
but I do believe there are women who are afraid to ask that question.
yeah.
I do, absolutely. For me, I remember the question that I used to be afraid to ask was, And not in the not verbatim, but how do you feel about work-life balance, or what's the work-life balance in the culture? I was afraid, and you shouldn't be afraid. You should have a life. But I think we have been conditioned to believe that when you enter, corporate world, it's like you owe them blood, sweat, and tears. You're still human. You still want a life. And I do believe you can have both without selling your soul. So on that note, I want to ask you if you can give one piece of advice to any leader out there, what would that be? Because I think your team is very lucky to have you. And it sounds like the culture is very supportive. And I think the main reason why people leave is not always, but it's usually the culture. It's usually the people that you walk away from. It's never like necessarily the job, because I don't think most jobs don't change all that much from corporate to corporate office. But I do believe that people can drive away an employee. Absolutely. Culture is huge. That's one of the questions I think people should ask. What's the culture like? And don't ask the person who's interviewing. Ask someone who works there.
Yeah, or you gotta go on LinkedIn, go and see, what are the people that you're gonna be surrounding yourself posting.
Percent. So, what would be your advice to any leader? Because I feel like your emotional intelligence and your leadership skills are. I wish I would have had a boss like you.
Thank you, thank you. It's funny because it's to a leader and it's also to the younger audience, the younger audiences, right? Is whenever you're interviewing or whenever you have an employee, it's not a one-way relationship. It's a dual relationship. So when I interview, and I hate going through interviews, or the process, and I probably shouldn't say that, but it's just, it's like until you
It's
find the right
fact.
person.
It's not the most
Um,
comfortable space.
yeah, but whenever I do an interview, I always tell the person, I'm going to ask you questions, but the same way I'm interviewing you, you're interviewing me and you're interviewing the company, right? But I don't think so. Then when you're making a decision, and why I say I hate interviews, I make sure that my interviews that I'm as candid as possible of like the craziness, the good, the bad, the ugly, so that and then you get to make a choice if you want to be part of the crazy, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But that choice doesn't end because I hire you. It works both ways, right? So it's always realizing and valuing from a leader that you need them as much as they need you. So there's a certain level of respect that you have to have them because I cannot hit my KPIs if my team doesn't do their job. Right. And then the other way around is you're getting paid for a service. You want to get paid for your job. Right. So then also delivering what you signed up for. Right. So yeah, I think it doesn't change because I interview you. It doesn't change because I'm a leader. We both need each other. We both have a role and we're both equally important in the company.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Now, one of the things that I like to do at the end of an interview is have our guests drop a truth bomb. So I want to ask you, if for every woman listening, what is one truth you can share with us for those women walking into their next meeting that may feel intimidated, may feel fearful? What's one truth that maybe you learned the hard way, but you want them to know, um, now?
Ask whatever you want to ask. The worst thing that they're going to say is no.
You know what's crazy? I have to share this. So I remember I would sit in meetings. I would sit as far back as I could. One, I would never, ever wear a red lipstick in the office. Never. And I would never wear my hair curly. These are the three things I would never do because I didn't want to call attention. And asking a questions, absolutely not. I would never do that.
And I just think it's like, and I mean it from all perspectives, right? If you're in a meeting and you're not really sure what you need to do and you walk away without knowing, guess what? You're already setting yourself up for failure. So you might as well ask, hey, what is it? What is it that you exactly want me to do? One, if you believe you deserve a raise, the worst you're going to say is no. But now you know where you stand with the company. So ask if you want to take the time off. Like the worst thing you're going to do is get a no or get a yes, right? But you'll never know if you don't ask the question, right? And then depending on the answer, whether it's to get your work done, guess what? Now you have the answers and you know how to do your job. And if it's the raise, the maternity leave, the whatever, the title, right? Then you already know where you stand with the company. But why torture yourself with oh, you know what? I haven't been given a raise. Or you know what? I want to ask my boss. Ask. Like the worst thing is going to get is a no.
It's crazy because it should be so simple, but I'll be honest with you, I learned that late in life. I had this colleague, I don't know, he asked and he got. And one day I asked him, "How do how do you get these opportunities?" He says, "Simple. You don't ask, you don't get."
Sure.
What is it they say? Closed mouth don't get fed?
Yeah, yeah.
Carolina, thank you so much for being here. I mean, I could talk to you for hours. We want to learn more about you or about World Emblem because I think a lot of people might want to apply for your jobs. How do we find out more?
LinkedIn. I think the easiest tool is probably LinkedIn.
Awesome. And we'll make sure to have those in the notes because a lot of people will want to find you now.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for being here. And how is your daughter? Is she good now?
So she's good. She's thriving. I think the beauty of it is that if you didn't know what she was going through, you would never know. She's a perfectly beautiful, thriving 3 year old with three teenager attitude at 3. But yeah, I think yeah, the beauty of it is just it's I would call it her little zipper is underneath her clothes. So if you don't know what's going on, she's as normal as you and I.
Bless, continued blessings. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Carolina's story proves that empathy isn't a liability in corporate spaces, it's a superpower. And for anyone watching, remember the rooms you enter don't define you, the way you show up in them does. Until next time, talk to you soon, loves. Bye.